with Paul Daner, Mark Salafo. Kick off the weekend, all right. It's the Growler Friday show. It's Dey Light.
All right, welcome into the latest episode of Dey Light. Paul Daner Jr., Mark Salafo here with you. Mark, what is up? Happy Friday to you.
Yeah, it's a nice laid-back episode with a totally, boring week without any huge news or big shattering changes to what the Bengals used to look like. It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. Not anything groundbreaking at all. This is, these shows are very much designed, as we've talked about the last couple of weeks, which, by the way, congratulations to us on making it to our third one. Still not canceled.
Yeah, we're doing it.
We're really doing it.
Everyone that's listening and sharing so far. There has been a lot of nice feedback from people.
And I appreciate the not nice feedback, too.
Yeah, thank you, haters. Thank you for committing to a few episodes before you go one way or the other.
Yeah. But these things were designed to have tangents. You never know where it's going to go. This week's a little different. There's still a lot of news happening, kind of as we speak. And you guys have a lot of free agency questions, a lot of stuff that we haven't been able to get to. Of course, we have had a ton of episodes this week where individual stuff as news has been breaking, very emergency pod heavy kind of, if you will, with Mo, one with Dave, one with Jay, are all up from all the different stuff that's happened. And so there's a lot of odds and ends to tie up because the Bengals still are doing stuff right now. Von Bell has signed yesterday since Jay and I last went. Mekhi, Becton, and Teair Tart are in town. There are giant men with questionable backgrounds wandering the halls right now of Teair Stadium, which is normally not what you want, but look, it's just what it is. It's what it is right now. So
that's the stage we're at.
That's the stage we're at. The first wave of free agency, all the boxes are checked. You love all the things. Now you're in the maybe we should dig a little deeper on some stuff here. Portion of the program.
Yeah, and for my standpoint as a fan, it still is setting in. Just the shock of seeing Joe Mixon and DJ Reader in press conferences with different teams now. Like, even just seeing that after so many years of having those guys be big culture fits was weird. But for as predictable as some of this free agency was, it still is sort of shocking as a fan. But that's the part we're at now, too. It's like Burrow's just in his closer phase of cupcakes and crackers for whatever free agents are left. There's no big mall watch anymore. There's not going to be any huge big splash that's still coming.
Yeah, I mean, you never know, but there's not a lot of splashing out there necessarily. Mall watch, I hope that we're not mall watching for Mekhi Becton. I mean, look, it's nice. There's some potential there, but although, you know what, he's got some La'el Collins type of feel to him a little bit, but without the cachet. And now you're a couple years in where that's not exciting anymore. That used to be. The Bengals fans, they've grown. Bengals fans have grown in free agency. Like players like La'el Collins, who are like another team just kicked to the curb, and it could be good. They're really the only team interested. It doesn't get you to the mall anymore.
No, if there is a mall watch with Becton, it's just totally reversed, where it's him just standing around in the mall like, hey, do you guys know who I am?
He is hard to miss. I mean, I think someone would guess football player when you see, 350 whatever pounds, 6'7", 8. I mean, he's just a massive human being. The Bengals looking at Becton, looking at Tart, who were both in the building on visits, partially kind of working that visit for both sides. This is for team and player. Team trying to get a few. Tart, look, last year, Teair Tart notably kicked out of the building in Tennessee. So that's not great, right? There's stuff there. He has one really good season where he kind of put it together and got waived by Tennessee for all the problems that were happening behind the scenes. So that's an issue. And can you count on getting the one good season again out of Teair Tart? Hard to know. I kind of have a story up right now on the risks that are happening everywhere at the defensive tackle position between the decision to let DJ Reader go, which is one that I'm sure we will be revisiting throughout next year, good or bad. And the decision on, do you take a risk on a guy like Teair Tart? Does that help you? or are you replacing the ultimate great culture guy with the opposite of that potentially? You know, like
no, I don't like
there's
that.
there's a lot happening there. And Becton similarly, like, are they going to find that he is a match for them? Is his connection with Frank Pollock going to be enough for them to say that he's the bridge guy for them? Or are there other bridge guys that they could look into? But that's kind of what the stage that we're at now. We met yesterday with Geno Stone, Mike Gesicki, and wow, I'm blanking on and Zach Moss, excuse me. And, you know, great signings, great fits, has all made a lot of sense. Now you're into the, okay, odds and ends portion of trying to figure out these trenches and what you're going to do. Both of these positions, you got to feel, though, are signings, if they happen, that would come with a draft pick complement. And so that's what to remember now. These are guys that anybody you're signing now, you need another plan.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where we're at. And I think Becton in particular, if they sign Becton, if that does happen from this visit, I feel like it has locked them in to offensive line at 18. And that's your combo right there of those two being your plan at tackle.
Which is sort of what the theme has always been with a lot of Bengals fans. They kind of looked at that draft and just how much offensive tackle talent is available and kind of where they're going to be drafting. And, you know, that made a lot of sense anyway. With as predictable as the free agent moves have been so far, it feels like the draft could be setting up for that. But I will say this too, like, you know, it's nice that they've got a few options left to work with, right? But nothing's going to transform that defense. But if this is a meeting, you know, with both of these guys for player and team, like, why do they have to trot Burrow out to the steakhouse to seal that deal? Like, if it's still for the team, he should be the closer when they're ready for these guys to fully commit.
I think Burrow comes out early when you have a big name on the fence, but the big names don't visit really hardly anymore. Like, that's just, he's got to be somebody he's real, like, you're really, and Burrow's the dessert. He's the cherry on top. Like, you sign with us, you can have dinner with Joe Burrow.
So why does Burrow have to go have dinner with Becton and Tart before? You know, that should be that was all the big rumor on Bengals Twitter last night, is that they were all at Ruby's. And I feel like Burrow, he shouldn't even have to make that dinner for, you know, low-level free agents.
Well, you know, no, I think Burrow needs to be having dinner with someone who's going to be in charge of potentially protecting him. Like, I said, I was kind of messaging with our Jets writer, trying to get a better feel this past week about Becton. And he's like, yeah, I mean, there's a reason he's not here. Coaches weren't huge fans. He kind of had to play because he had to play. And that's what they had. But I said, oh man, this guy's not going to be the reason that Burrow's career ends, is it? And here's the thing. Anybody they sign has a chance to be the reason that something bad happens at offensive line, okay? Or really anywhere, but specifically at offensive line. And so, you know, to me, is there a chance an offensive lineman can start in front of Joe Burrow? He would like to have dinner with that man before you sign him. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's an important part of the process.
Wasn't he hurt last season, Becton? Like,
he's been hurt. He finally was healthy last season. He's been hurt almost his entire career. I thought he was still
complaining about the knee or something last year.
Yeah, I mean, I probably is always complaining about something. He's a massive human being. It's hard to move that weight around.
There's also those levels of injuries, though, where it's like Sam Hubbard's playing, and then afterwards we find out, oh, he's been playing through something that was, you know, tragic and severe, and he's a warrior. And then other guys are, you know, playing, and they're playing bad, and they're like, wait, I was hurt too. You know, that sort of thing.
There's a lot of excuse making and revisionist history around injury happens this time of year. There's no question. But there's injury issues. I mean, if you're going to talk about if you were looking at taking the big risk reward on somebody like Tyron Smith, if you were talking about Becton, you're talking about injury history with a lot of these guys that are available, because the ones without it, have a lot of those have signed at this point. All right, we want to get into some of the questions that we've got going on here.
I did want to say we got so many incredible questions this week. Some of them we'll move to a less newsy week, since we have a lot of free agency to talk about. But thank you for sending those. You can keep sending those. We'll ambush Paul plenty on this show. But let's dive right into obviously the biggest one for a lot of fans, losing Reader and Mixon, two big locker room presences. Who steps up in that respect to help? Those are big culture guys. People are worried about losing players that have been here so long and set the tone. So how does that get affected?
It's maybe, it's up there as the primary concern for this year. That's a lot. Let's talk about, I did, I have a few numbers. This is something I went on a bit of a soliloquy the other night. It was late with Jay, and I was just kind of
for a soliloquy.
It was a very much like, it's been a long day. Only thing that was missing was the bourbon in the right hand, as I waxing poetic about change in the circle of life. But it's true. In the NFL, you do have to change. You do have to evolve. Your leadership has to emerge. And they are in a bit of I don't want to call it a crisis in a world where you have Burrow as your leader and Sam Hubbard has been a captain and Mike Hilton, and they have plenty of Ted Karras. They have plenty of people that have been a part of that setting the tone leadership. But that's, fans root for laundry. The team is driven by people, and leadership is the culture. Those are the three parts of it. And the leadership, they're losing so much of it. Let's talk about their playoffs. Okay, they have 30 players on offense and defense that have played at least 125 playoff snaps for this team. Only now that Von Bell's back, 14 of them are still here. Less than half. One of them left. Another one has requested a trade. So you're talking about a lot of people that, when you think about this thing, this culture, this of winning and these playoff wins and everything that's happened there, more than half of those guys have now gone bye-bye. And you're latching on to the rest of them. On top of that, think about what walked out the door. Here's total snaps since 2020 of DJ Reader, Jonah Williams, Joe Mixon, Chidobe Awuzie, and assuming Tyler Boyd, wherever he ends up, whether it's Pittsburgh or Kansas City or maybe the Jets. 14,048 snaps since 2020 between those guys. Multiple year captains with Mixon and Reader. Jonah Williams was Zach Taylor's first draft pick. That's a lot to lose. That's a lot of culture setters that are out the door, and that's got to grow now. That you have to find the replacement for that, and that's a big deal. I don't think it's something they can't do, because you do have the right people. Your best players being your hardest workers are part of that, and you have Chase and Burrow. That's going to be who they're going to build everything around, and Hubbard too, which is why he's a big part of it. But that's a lot to lose.
Especially because Burrow, obviously it's his franchise, it's his team. Everything's going to be built around your superstar quarterback like that. But he's not a rah leader type. He's not the fire everybody up guy and talking everybody up. He seems more like a lead by example guy. Who are some of the players you think are going to step into that role of that? Reader and Mixon are kind of leaving behind.
Logan Wilson.
Okay.
He got extended last year. He's been here. He's one of these core guys that they have really tried to build around. He defensively in particular needs to step. Von Bell being back is big for that. I think that's the underrated part of Von Bell's return was he was a captain, very much the enforcer kind of, who's just not going to let BS fly. And you need that. It helps when he's a start, even as a backup. I think he can still do a lot of that. That his return is big in that regard. I think, Karras still being here has been a part of that. Orlando Brown, even, I don't know, your guys that you can look at the top of the balance sheet, and that's usually where you need your new leadership to come from, because that's who people look up to. That's who they want to be. This is the NFL, man. These are 20-year-old kids that, how do I make the money? Act like that guy. So those guys are the ones that need to be the ones that do everything the right way, because that's where everybody falls in line. And I do think they've signed some guys that have that potential. Geno Stone was looked at that way in Baltimore. And so there's a potential, for that to be the case too. But I think you just look at whoever makes the most money, and that's who the young players on the team want to emulate. And so if those guys are doing the right thing, you usually have a team of guys that do the right thing. As long as you got a couple enforcers in there, and I think that they do have that, and everybody listens to whatever the hell Burrow says, and that dude's focused on nothing but winning tilts, and that's a big part of it. So
yeah, I can't tell you from the fan perspective how relieving it is to have a guy that is so team oriented and football oriented. Like, what a disaster it would be if your franchise quarterback all of a sudden started talking about a vice presidential run, Like, what a nightmare. If you said, nightmare. I did play 5 snaps for you last year. Maybe this year I'll try politics. It's just nice to not have that circus surrounding him. But one of the players you mentioned coming back in that enforcer leadership role, Von Bell, we talked last week about which safety could be the Von Belliest of this free agency class. I didn't think it would be Von Bell.
Yeah. Yeah. No, well, and it's not. Here's the thing. I would say Von Bell is not the Von Belliest of the safeties that they signed, because we were talking about the old Von Bell, not
right.
An old Von Bell, the old Von Bell, which was the 26-year-old, 7-year-old guy that they signed out of New Orleans. Geno Stone is that. I think they view him that way. The ascending player on the rise, who we talked about, was a clear fit there. And I think he can be that, was a leader type in Baltimore, dude that's earned everything. Von Bell is here to teach everyone else how he became Von Bell, right? Like, and to do the leadership stuff. Him shaking loose was such a part of what happened. We talked about last week, all those free agent safeties that came loose, got the attention of Carolina, who said, oh, Justin Simmons, their defensive coordinator, knew directly that he loved Justin Simmons, or was with him in Denver. And so said, oh, well, I guess if I can get Justin Simmons, I'm willing to move on from Von Bell. And suddenly he comes loose and you can bring him in. That works itself out nicely. I mean, it was always the thing of, boy, if they could bring Von Bell back to know this defense, that would be great. And he's a great person to teach Jordan Battle. Jordan Battle's kind of the next Von Bell. I think teach him how to do what he did, and then teach the system to everybody, and be there as an insurance policy in case things go sideways with anybody back there. Like, look, if Jordan Battle doesn't take a step this offseason, Von Bell's going to start over him. Okay. And if Geno Stone comes in and is struggling with things, Von Bell could be, if either of those guys get hurt, he's right there. If they want to do 3 safety stuff, Von Bell's right. It's a great piece to have, and have him at the league minimum is great. But
yeah, how do you see
I think that Geno Stone was still more Von Belly than Von Bell, is my contention.
It is just amazing we still have Von Bell now back in the picture, but I can't imagine that he's brought back here to not play much. Like, how do you see the safety position shaking out? Jordan Battle had a promising rookie season, but what does this mean for Dax Hill and where you slot him on this team?
That's the question right now. And so I think Jordan Battle and Geno Stone are your starters. They are here to in the 1A scenario. Von Bell is here as the third guy, find a role for backup insurance policy. I mean, they didn't pay Von Bell starter money. They paid him backup money. They let Nick Scott go because Von Bell is better to have here than Nick Scott as the third safety. And I don't think Von was going to find a starting role anywhere. So you plug him in that position. And like I said from the very beginning, the biggest problem that I would have is it's fine to bet on youth. It's fine to bet on a free agent coming in. You can't do that without an insurance policy. Von Bell is the perfect insurance policy on betting on Battle's development and Geno Stone being a free agent fit. If Geno Stone comes in and struggles like Nick Scott did, well, you need to have a better option. And they have that now, and that's huge. And you need a better option if injury strikes, where you're not pulling somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing off the street. You got 3, really football intelligent to lose system guys back there, and that's a big deal. So the Dax Hill question is the one of the day. He certainly is not going to be in that safety room with those 3. I would assume that you're looking at some version of the Trey Flowers role, slot corner behind Mike Hilton, and a piece at outside corner if necessary. Maybe they want to put him in a competition with DJ Turner. I don't necessarily think that's where it goes. We don't really have clarity on that. I don't think that situation's done. And I can't imagine Dax Hill's happy. Here's my Dey Light, half-baked feel on a Friday here. This is not me reporting. This is me saying, I think this is something you have to consider. You got to consider if there's a trade market for Dax Hill.
Yeah,
you have to. If he was not happy as a rookie, notably so. He has now been displaced after his sophomore season here. And he is a first-round pick, a former first-round pick who has played out of the position he played in college. Yeah, I'm giving that the thumb down there. I'm giving that the thumb down off this thing. He is playing outside of the position he has in college. Teams loved Dak. He was a first-round pick for a reason. Teams loved him. And to think, and you have a hole at defensive tackle that you need to and potentially other spots that you need something serviceable at right now. If you're looking at creative options, I said a couple weeks ago, creative options at defensive tackle because the draft is bad for it. The free agency market was a total trash heap for it for the most part. Creative option could be maybe you move Dax Hill to get something at defensive tackle. This is me looking at a possible move forward. Okay, this is not me saying I've heard this. That's got to be a part of this equation. You got to be thinking about that because there seems to be no real spot. And next year, and he's getting more expensive. A first round pick is still you're looking at $3 million plus cap hit next year. Is he Mike Hilton's replacement at slot? Sure, probably, maybe, but there's a lot of ways to get answers at slot next year. Okay, is that position worth keeping Dax Hill just basically in the background or as a backup piece this year? I don't know.
What do you think his trade market would be if he's, being traded as a backup slot corner instead of your starting safety? Like now the team has seen a little bit of him. He's still athletic.
Pick. He is an insanely athletic first round pick from 2 years ago on a easy to manage contract. Those are valuable. That's a valuable piece that people are willing to give. If somebody has 2 defensive tackles that they like, or they draft one and are willing to move on, whatever, something where they feel like they could move one direction and a big hole they don't feel like they filled at slot or versatile piece in the secondary, they would be very interested. And I think there's a decent market. Jim Harbaugh is the coach of the Chargers, and he was his coach at Michigan. He knows him very well. Is there something there? That's just that you can have those connections. Again, I'm not saying this is happening. I'm saying as you sit down with what now has happened over the course of this week, where you got 2 safeties, you didn't get what you wanted at defensive tackle. Dax Hill is in the middle of that. And is there something you can do here to take your extras on one spot and put it into your deficiency at the other? I think that's something that you have to be considering as you reset their map right now. That's all.
And it did feel like they were trying to upgrade the safety room. That's no surprise. I don't know that they went into free agency thinking that the Von Bell stuff would happen, but now that it has, you're right. Like his role it doesn't seem to be there. And from a player perspective, and even as a fan, like you want to see this guy have a chance somewhere. He's an athletic player. He knows how to play football. He might not be in the right spot in Cincinnati, but if you could get some value for him, that does make a lot of sense. So he could have a fresh start somewhere else. And talking about fresh starts, that was another question we had this week. It was tricky from one side of things. Everything was very predictable. We talked about the Mixon stuff before. Everybody kind of saw that coming. the DJ Reader stuff was obviously on the table. It was a possibility. Of all these guys that have left, who do you think now has the best landing spot? Who do you think fared best of our former Bengals here?
I love DJ Reader in Detroit. I am, anybody that has listened or watched now, shout out YouTube. Good to be back on YouTube. Anybody that has listened over the years knows my affection for DJ Reader as a player, as what he's done in Cincinnati, as a person. I think he has been incredible. I wrote today, I would argue him from the nose tackle position. I could argue his peak here, him at his best, better than anyone in the history of the franchise at doing that. He brings this like nasty grit. He would always call it, I'm grimy, and he got grimy in the like streets of rural Carolina. Like, I love his story and the way he talks about it. Could there be a better fit than Detroit and Dan Campbell for that personality? Like, there's a reason that Detroit loved the idea of DJ Reader. They know the Bengals well. They have emulated them.
Yeah.
Right. Like this year's Lions were the 21 Bengals, and they have this, we will bite your knees off grimy thing that Dan Campbell has said in there. DJ Reader is a fit there with a young defensive line that's got full of badasses of their own. Like, I love his fit. I hope to hell it works. I wish he was on grass, but I hope to hell it works.
Yeah, it makes it easier to root for him from my perspective too.
Yeah,
like, he's not with a rival. Yeah, go win with the Lions. They're a fun
I love that for DJ.
Bounce back.
I'm happy for DJ, and I hope that he plays well and collects every dime of that, and not just the 9 guaranteed. That obviously is an insurance on his injury. I think Mixon's landing spot is great. Look, we talked a lot, and someone accused me of calling him a bum. I think he has been an average, just a guy running back. I think that's partially because of the Bengals system. Like, they were looking to shift to somebody who misses more tackles, can be more explosive, has a little bit more juice out of the shotgun and all that stuff that they do. That hasn't fit. Mixon is a better fit under center zone run, cutback run game. That's where his style excels. Houston is going to give him so much more of that. Their game is going to be a better fit for him. And I don't know how, hey, good for him. He got $13 million guaranteed from Houston before he even finished his press conference, it seems like. So they obviously believe that too. So I don't know how you can say it isn't a good fit where you go somewhere, you don't have to play it down, and a team that traded you for a 7th round pick gives you away, and you get $13 million guaranteed in a 3-year extension when you're an aging running back. And we know what has happened to those guys in this league. I think that's obviously a great fit for Mixon because he has a team that clearly believes in him. And and I don't think he felt that way here.
Believes in him more than anybody. Did you think that there was any chance that he would get that kind of an extension if he got picked up by somebody else?
That's a stunner.
Like, that's crazy.
That's a stunner to me. But I think that goes to show how much Houston felt he was a fit for exactly what they do, that he was being misused here, but he didn't fit what Burrow wanted to do here. And that's part of why he was such an obvious thing they had to move on from, because his power and efficiency and cutback stuff didn't fit as much with the style that they were doing. It clearly Houston sees the opposite. They traded for him. They extended him. Okay, must be a great fit. Doesn't feel like they settled there. And
that's a big swing, though, that can really come back to bite you if it doesn't play out.
Sure.
I don't think they needed to commit as heavily as they did.
I think this is just me personally, and this isn't a Mixon statement. This is a running back statement. Any significant, guaranteed, multi-year investment in a running back who has any kind of major usage, and Joe Mixon has more carries than almost anyone over the last 5 years, is a poor investment. That in today's NFL, that is proven. That is my opinion on running backs. And so would I do that? Absolutely not. That's not about Joe Mixon. That is about aging running backs. I've seen enough. The freak shows can prove you wrong. Derrick Henry, I think, can prove you wrong. but there's more Dalvin Cooks than Derrick Henry's. Okay. Like it's just, there's only so much shelf life in these guys, and there's so much juice amongst rookies and second year backs that it doesn't make as much sense. But
you better hope he doesn't listen to this, or you've got a lot of clown emojis coming your way. You know,
yeah,
he's going to be sending.
I can tell you there's one thing he's not doing. It's listening to us anymore. He wouldn't talk to us or listen to us in the first place. And I don't care about that. I know this becomes divisive. People hate this. I get called names, and I've never seen so much division over something as just trying to lay out the case logically. But that was just what I tried to do with the Mixon thing. But people have passionate opinions about him. I get it. He's somebody that the fan base has connected to. I try to do it from a football perspective, but I know people are going to think that, oh, the media thing. And I said this with Jay, this was never about all that stuff on the fringes, all of that other stuff. This was never about that. This was about the football stuff and the fit when the way I tried to cover it, and certainly in the way I think that they made the decision.
And you know what? Right, good for him. He got the money. Good for him.
No, good for him. Good. I think it's an absolute win-win for everybody. I think the Bengals get a better fit and what they want in Zach Moss for cheaper, and Houston clearly got what they want, and Joe Mixon clearly got what he wanted. So cool. Like everybody, this is what you want. These situations happen. Everybody in their job, go find something that's better for you. And I think everybody can say that they feel like they did today. So good.
So what about our other free agents, like, Jonah and Awuzie?
Jonah, Cheeto. I think those are both nice spots. I'd put them both like tied. I mean, Jonah got $15 million annually. That's nice. 2 years. He gets to another bite at the apple. That's a good spot for him. He's playing right tackle in Arizona. He's a starter. That's what he wanted. That's good. Chidobe Awuzie, same thing. He's going to start. Brian Callahan knows him. He's there to be part of setting the culture there. That's a great spot too for him. I think they all found good spots.
I mean, it hasn't happened yet. Let's say though that Tyler Boyd does end up in Pittsburgh, like has been rumored. Where would that fall in your list of these 4 guys? Is Boyd in Pittsburgh? It's still worse.
I think good for TB to put a nice bow on his career in Pittsburgh. He's a Pittsburgh guy and all that stuff. But Russ Wilson is his quarterback. Now the Chiefs, if he's catching balls from Patrick Mahomes and he's living the front and center of the NFL, conversation life, that works out. Usually for people.
I don't want to watch him on the Chiefs. Don't even put it out there. I can't.
I'm just saying. Yeah. I'm just saying, if you're Tyler Boyd, what's the better fit for you? Playing for Patrick Mahomes and being front and center with the Chiefs is always the better fit than catching balls from Russ Wilson in Pittsburgh. Okay.
Absolutely. Rusty on Twitter, he asked, again, staying with the Reader stuff, Reader saying how surprised he was with how it went down. Mixon, talking about how he was hurt a little bit. With both those guys being seemingly genuinely surprised with how it played out, did that surprise you at all that it kind of went down that way? Or that just the fact, not that the moves happened, but were you surprised that these guys weren't clued into it a little bit more, or is that just how it goes?
No, I think that's partially how it goes. I think DJ was surprised, and understandably surprised, that the Bengals weren't more aggressive towards keeping him, but paid Sheldon Rankins, a similar to better contract. Sheldon Rankins is a little older. Now he doesn't have the injury, but he also doesn't have the history here of DJ Reader. And so I get them paying Rankins, but I think you're saying, really, that guy and not me? You're not even coming after me aggressively. I can't get something from you. I think there was surprise that you always feel like you want them to value you. Anybody at any job ever has felt this way.
Yeah, sure.
Like, I just feel like they're going to do the right thing and value me and see all the hard work that I've done. And then the business doesn't.
How far were the Bengals, do you think? I mean,
how far off?
Yeah, the money wasn't crazy.
I mean, I don't think it was particularly close. I don't believe that it was particularly close. Certainly not to that. And I think that was, I think they were trying to be and find creative ways to be, probably, but I don't think it was. And so you end up with, someone that feels like you wish that what you did there meant more in your eyes. And I think that and then you've got other stuff, right? You've got agents, you've got secondhand information, you've got a lot of people with their hands in the mix of the decision, and a lot of feelings that get hurt easily. it's emotional right now for all these guys. And so that's hard. And Mixon, I am not surprised that he's surprised. I think he viewed himself that he was going to be here and felt that and that he was going to be a part of the team. And that was his view of it. And it wasn't where it ended up. And because that decision was, I think it was close. I think it was close to whether it was going to happen or not. And so, yeah, I'm not, I think both of them, I understand them being surprised.
Another good Twitter question. I did see this morning they're bringing Tanner Hudson back as well. So, looking at where the Bengals are right now, has the team gotten better or worse since the start of free agency?
Well, I think that they have gotten better. Let's go by position. Let's break it down because I think it's hard to say in general. Yeah. I think they're better. I think they're better at safety and defensive back. I think they're better at running back. And I think they will be better at running back once I think you add a draft pick, the combo of Moss and Brown, an expanded Brown role. Like I like that a lot. More for what they're trying to do, add a draft pick with some potential. Like there's maybe another, third down back type piece that they could add there. I think they're better there. Tight end, they're better. I like, the combination of what Gesicki can bring them to be more explosive, even counting him as a half receiver. I like Sample and Hudson. I mean, look, they had Sample and Hudson last year. Now they're just adding Gesicki, who's a way more explosive option. So they're better there.
You didn't like Irv Smith and what he brought to the team?
I keep forgetting to even mention him, but we will be mentioning him when he catches a touchdown for the Chiefs against the Bengals in week 7.
That'll be an exciting, yeah. Gosh.
I got to say, I'm not betting on the Irv Smith redemption arc, but I love the joke of it. So we've got the same, I think quarterback, linebacker, edge rusher are all the same, haven't changed. I think we have two variables out there, offensive line and receiver. I think they're better at offensive line because of continuity. You got 4 guys coming back. I think they're going to be better there. I think they're going to add a bridge, and I think they're going to spend a first-round draft pick on a right tackle to get that thing solidified forever. A real dude who's going to be there. That's going to be better, I think, but that's TBD. Wide receiver, TBD. I think what's going to happen with Higgins, he's probably going to be here playing. I think you know what you're going to get, but the slot, I think they're going to be better. I think they add one of these day 2 wide receivers that are going to be good. Like, I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be different. I think they're going to be faster. Gesicki is kind of an addition to your receiver room. Boyd was getting up there. And so I think they're going to be, you have development from Yoshivas and Jones that I think you can bank on them being a little better. Trent Irwin will probably be back. Like, I think that's pieces. Better, but it's also to be determined. They still have to get that in the draft. They still have to hit that. So we'll see. I think they're worse at defensive tackle. And they had a bad run defense last year. I think it's a major concern, and I think they're going to have to consider some stuff. They need to look into some of these older 1-year rentals. Like, they need to look into that. They need to look into a lot of stuff to figure out a way to just be the same there. Because they're not better, even with Rankins coming in with Hill.
Yeah, and that's a pretty big worse. We talk about all those betters, but that's still with especially
premium,
how bad that run defense was at times.
No doubt.
Another good question from Kyle. This is more about like the process that you go through in free agency. And this is a 2-parter. So listen to all of this before you jump in with your quick answer about your work process. But he wants to know what your process is of obtaining and confirming information during free agency. He's not asking you to out all your sources, but he's kind of curious how national reporters will often break signings before the local guys who are a little bit more tuned in. Also, when you see that a signing does break, what is your process to go confirm that information? Secondary question that we had from Twitter. Okay, so this is nice to you. This is a real positive in the Paul column. He wants to know how your free agency guesses were too accurate. How often do you know exactly what's going on and you have to pretend that you're guessing to protect your sources? Is that the game?
Well, free agency is a game from a media perspective. Everyone is trying to find their angle and where they are. There's a couple of there's probably about 10 different games being played. One, the first part of this question is the national insider stuff. So you have so many of these guys are represented by a handful of agents who have working wink nods with Schefter, Rappaport, Diana Rossini, any number are people like you. There's a handful of these insider people that they play this game. They're keeping score, who got it first, who followed 3 seconds later. And the agents have that look, you treat me well all year. When my guy signs, I'll send my you'll be on that group text, or you'll get the direct text, and you know who's who because you see who breaks who and who their representation is. Like famous now in Cincinnati, David Mulgeta. Notice there's one reporter who tends to break a lot of his clients. I don't know if people notice that. You can go ahead and check that out. But that's how that works. That's how most of these guys, specifically the big names, work. Teams are not breaking this. Okay. Teams are playing the game of their own content. They want to have their team videos, their team rollouts, their special interviews, their version of the news to get their own content going. They're doing that. And then you have people that are trying to certainly on a local level, you're working to confirm, maybe break a few angles, things like that. I personally like to just know what's going on. I'm not as into trying to have gotten my Twitter thumbs out there by 4 seconds. I don't care about that stuff. I personally, my philosophy has always been that that's from our perspective, from a local perspective, not that important. Like, I don't know how many people remember. Go ahead, ask yourself if you're listening to this, who broke Alex Kappa signing for the Bengals? Who broke Orlando Brown? Who had that first? Does anybody remember? No.
And how did that change your media power rankings?
Right. But who had, where did my bosses care about readership on the stories? And so I try to have stuff from my angle that is more behind the scenes of what happened, know what's going on so I can speak intelligently on it before, during, and after, which is the second part of the question, which is not too accurate. You're still guessing. The team is guessing. But between knowing the team well, having enough connections within and around it, know what direction the people and direction they're going, that you can say that. You can say that you know what they're trying to do. What they're trying to do doesn't always be what happened. This did kind of go the way they thought it would go. It kind of went the way that they thought it would go. And that's why a lot of the things that I was guessing that I plan on holding over Jay's head next week in our competition did end up playing out because that was kind of plan A for a lot of that. And so, yeah, did I know what their plans were and some of the names? My thing that I always do with anybody I talk to is try to not look stupid. I want to know what conversations are and have those conversations here so you guys can talk about and debate through what they're talking about, and have those conversations with, in what I write about what is being talked about in the building. Okay. That's where I try to live. I don't need to be specific, and I never want to out any sources at all. No, that's true. Of course, we're never doing that. In, around the team, through the league, you have enough of those people that you talk to that you can be pretty clear.
It also just seems like the media has changed in the last few years anyway. Like, getting the breaking signing first isn't really going to change what you do or benefit you all that much, the way that 20 years ago, if you had a full day in your newspaper before a competitor, that makes a difference. 10 minutes on Twitter, nobody cares. But getting that story behind it,
that's great. Like I people that do that. Like, look, the Schefters and Rappaports and Dianas and all, they do stuff that is very difficult in its own way, and they are paid handsomely to do it, and that's great. I couldn't live that life. Like, I don't. Yeah, that's not my niche. That's not where I feel like I can help and be part of it. I like to be able to. People to know that they can trust that I know what's going on when I talk on the podcast, and people trust that I know what's going on in what I write. And maybe people say, no, you don't, you're an idiot. That's fine. Like, then and people have that right to have that opinion. I'm sure they'll probably show up when you went into my comments later, but like, I don't, I do my best for people to trust that I'm informed, and I don't feel like, I have to be out there about that. I feel like I'd kind of try to let my track record speak for itself on that. I have that advantage because I've been covering the team so long. It's harder if you show up in your news somewhere and you have to build that trust.
Well, you were pretty dead on with your free agent signings that you predicted. It did feel like this. You said this kind of went the way they thought it might go. Not a huge ton of surprises for the team. So knowing that, do you think that how do you see the draft playing out? Like, do you feel like those top 2 or 3 picks kind of have to be what they have to be because of the positional needs?
Yeah. But I think the positional needs are also kind of set up because they knew what the draft was going to be. Offensive line, receiver, like everybody knows that there's going to be really good players on day 1 at offensive line and day 2 at receiver. So I don't think it's a coincidence that they focused elsewhere in their free agency. The whole league did.
Yeah.
The whole league has pushed offensive line down the road. The whole league put other positions forward that aren't as good. Running back got aggressive. All these things that are not so good in the draft, teams really focused on in free agency. The top end of defensive tackle. Guess what? Those guys got a ton of money. You know why? Because this draft doesn't have a bunch of those guys.
Yeah, it stinks.
And the Bengals, that's where the Bengals deficiency happened. They weren't willing to go there, and the draft doesn't really have that. So they need to they're going to find a receiver probably somewhere on day 2 or early on day 3. And they added that compensatory pick at round 3, which is huge for that. That could be the spot where you find this year's Tank Dell. And they're going to need an offensive lineman probably on day 1, and they're going to need a defensive tackle in there somewhere too. They've got 4 picks to get those 3 boxes checked and something else. That could be tight end. That could be that could be another receiver. It could be anything. I have a wild card in there where I think, offensive line at 18, and then those 3 picks, some combination of those 2 and another one in all of those picks. So that could be however they feel like the board falls for them. But I think that has given some clarity to us there.
It does feel like it's going to be a little bit more predictable than maybe in years past when the holes weren't as glaring and the solutions weren't as obvious in the draft, especially in round
corner
1.
Corners in that mix too.
Yep.
I mean, they could definitely do 2nd round corner for a 3rd year in a row, and continue to put that cycle in. So that's also in the mix. Maybe that's your first 4 picks.
Like it seems pretty clear what they're going to do. Although, like if you asked a lot of fans, they want the splashier pick. I mean, you can almost pretty certainly rule out a tight end from Georgia in the 1st round, right? Like, I think that's got to be put to bed
for sure. Yeah,
there's another popular one that people want to talk about that doesn't make logical sense, but it's fun as a fan. Like, you want Brock Bowers on this offense. You also want to see Justin Jefferson come to Cincinnati and play with Jamar Chase. That was another Twitter question. What goes through your mind as a reporter when something like that, which started off, it felt like a bit, right? It felt like all of us were just kind of in like, oh yeah, this is going to happen. Look at this tweet from Jamar. Justin Jefferson's coming to Cincinnati. They're getting the gang back together from LSU. And that seemed to get out of hand pretty quickly. How does that go? What happens in your reporter brain when you see that actually start to get legs in some areas?
Well, first of all, it's okay. Let's make sure that I'm not the idiot here. Like, there's no way, right? And so you know what you know, and that's not going to happen. And then it's just watching, where it comes from. Like, I mean, I just want to find with LIX bound 59 on some Facebook who somehow has a friend who knows Joe Burrow's girlfriend, and Joe Burrow's girlfriend's just spilling all the team secrets, and Joe's going to take less money, and they're getting the band back together, and everyone's taking less money, because you see that a lot in the NFL. Players at the absolute top of their game in the entire league all deciding to take less money to do something fun. That happens all the time. And
Yeah,
and teams being able to pay all of those guys at once. Like this just stuff. But it's when you get where it really turns comical is when like Tyler Eifert is promoting his gambling, like, whatever he's doing, his ad partner with them and claiming he has sources. And then you get the Florios of the world who are showing up. And he's like, I'm checking in if Eifert really does have sources. Like, it's just, this is what happens. It's so weird to watch viral things and how they spin out of control. It just reminds you, anytime you see anything viral that feels real, to just always remember how crazy it feels when you see something that is not real do what it does. It's just, it gets out of control so quick. It's such a fire. It's such a fire.
Yeah, like Tyler Eifert is the one that's still so plugged in with all the sources that I couldn't believe that gave it so much extra fuel, but it did. All right, so we have another good question. Are you ready for a palate cleanser?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's. That was a lot. This has been a lot. This has been a lot. I know people. There's so many questions. There's a lot to get off our chest, and we haven't had much fun yet, Mark.
I know. Outside of here or there, we've had to deal with the news of the day, which that's fine.
I hate news. I hate doing news.
Yeah. So this is Dey Light. Let's get a little bit lighter.
We haven't been light enough. This has not been light enough.
So this is a Seinfeld question. Who is the absolute best character that would only appear in one episode?
Oh, do you have one? Do you have your favorite for this?
Well, I think like everyone's gonna go Soup Nazi, right? Like that's got to be not that it's your favorite, but it's certainly one of the most memorable cameos on that show.
He would be one.
John Paul, like oversleeping the marathon, like that was
that's just
classic.
See, that's just it. This becomes a tough philosophical question of what the question is asking. Are we talking about the best individual performance by a character, like caught a heat check in a show? Or are we talking like that storyline of that character was one of my favorites because what it did for everybody else? I have a couple of different answers here, right? For me.
Yeah, I still have one that I think is my personal favorite, although it doesn't necessarily hit like, the most impactful. But those are two that I think a lot of people might say. And obviously Soup Nazi, for casual fans is going to be the first one that they remember that was only in one episode.
Would you consider yourself a casual Seinfeld fan?
I mean, it's one of the greatest shows of all time. So probably just coming from the comedian perspective of respecting, what they've done, just Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, like it probably puts me in a much more serious fan category than most people would be. Although there's also the huge philosophical debate. A lot of hardcore Seinfeld people are very anti-Friends. And like from my perspective, obviously Seinfeld's a way funnier show, and I think it's a better show, but I don't have the hate for Friends that a lot of comedy savants might have. Different strokes for different folks. There's some funny episodes, some great people involved in that show too. So I don't necessarily see that as the huge rivalry. Where do you come down on the Seinfeld stuff before we go further?
Well, first of all, I am one of those like crazy Seinfeld fans. Like I am totally greatest show ever, funniest show ever, in my opinion. And I don't know that it's gonna be hard to top it. That said, I have respect for Friends, what it was. Seinfeld versus Friends is not necessarily a place I thought I was going to go today, but I'm willing to. But I thought Seinfeld did a better, far like almost like inexcusable how different it was after the first 5 seasons of Seinfeld versus after the first 5 seasons of Friends. Friends turned into this everyone's hooking up with everyone relationship thing, whereas I thought Seinfeld continued to be funny. It never turned into some version of its different version of itself. It continued to be fresh. It continued to create new and be unique and be itself. Friends just turned into this like everyone, like it didn't have the same lasting power. It would have been better off if it just ended 3 seasons earlier, which I wouldn't say that about Seinfeld. And that to me is the biggest difference maker between those two.
I mean, once Larry David left the show, though, there was a noticeable change. And once Larry David left,
yeah, but I still think it still brought the.
I
still thought it brought it. I still thought it brought it pretty good. I want to answer the question. I want to answer the question because that It's like a whole. Let's save that for June when we're trying to.
We could really get. Yeah, we could get.
Yeah, we'll bring back Seinfeld versus Friends debate to fill you in. My answer, through 3 philosophical interpretations of that question. 1, individual performance of a single hysterical line goes to Ella Joyce, the actress Ella Joyce, who was the university dean in the Kramerica Industries episode with the chicken. When they're in the meeting, it's Kramer and Darren and the dean discussing what has happened and with this internship that Darren is supposedly on with Kramer. And she fires off the line, as far as I can tell, your entire enterprise is no more than a solitary man with a messy apartment, which may or may not contain a chicken. It's one of my favorite lines in the history of the show. She nails it and just crushes it. And the scene of trying to discuss the internship as a whole is legendary. So that, firing off that line, Ella Joyce gets my best, like, character ripping off a great, what was written for them piece. That's my answer there. My favorite, like, John Favreau as Eric the Clown when George is in the birthday party where he ends up running out and knocking over everyone on the way out was epic. And then from a storyline perspective, I'm shouting out Little Jerry.
Yeah, that's an easy. Yeah, it's a good one.
I mean, the Little Jerry episode is absolutely great, and having him right there pecking at the boxing gloves and everything. Like I was everything that involved Little Jerry, I was here for. So I'm going to fire him off for another answer as just really bringing the entire episode up a notch.
Yeah, Little Jerry is definitely an iconic one for one episode. My favorite is one that didn't make as much sense. It was Larry David as the caped lawyer.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that one as Frank Costanza's lawyer. Just I loved how nonsensical it was. Just the choice of the cape just always cracked me up. I love that that's how Larry got involved outside of doing the Steinbrenner voice and stuff like that. But yeah, the caped lawyer, that's got to be down there for me too.
That's up there. I love it.
All right, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit more. This is an interesting one because I know we're both Ohio U guys. This came from Twitter. Which green is your favorite at Ohio U? Which is the best Ohio University green?
Well, I'm first of all wearing my OU today. Big game tonight.
Huge game.
OU trying to run through the MAC tournament. They're looking good. They're hot. So shout out Bobcats. Man, if I didn't have responsibilities, I would totally be like, let's hop in a car and drive to Cleveland Saturday and go take in the MAC title game if they make it. Because I'm all for it. I never pass on a trip to Cleveland. That said, I mean, the only way you can answer this is like the one that you lived on, right? I mean, is there someone who's like, man, I lived here, but I loved the other one? I don't. I guess people do that. I mean, I was a West Green guy my whole life.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Wow. I did not see that.
It's partial. I'm partial to it. I get it. Like East was probably the best just because of you've got Jeff Hill. You're down by all that in the neighborhoods. There's more to do there. The South was the freshman green. It's a little far away for me. And I wasn't like a workout person who I like being close to ping or something like, so I would say West is just me personally. It's strictly based on memories. I like being close to the convo. And it's I don't know. Like I think I don't know how anybody has an opinion other than like, look, it's just this is what I loved. That's where I was. That's where I was at.
I had a friend who loved West, and his argument was because it was so close to the bars. I'm like, you shouldn't still be living like when you're going to the bars. You're probably in an apartment. You're an off-campus.
You were an RA as a senior or something for free room and board.
I mean, I was a South Green guy, so I'm still partial. Like you said, where you lived, I had to do 2 runs there because I was in the front 4 as a sophomore, which was a painful experience. But yeah, I mean, South Green, East, they all have their merits. West, I feel for you. Cool, you're close to the convo. That's exciting. That always felt so removed from everything else. But we do have some more fun Athens questions for another day. Better summer topics for sure.
Yes.
But I know that we do have a little bit more free agency to talk about. This is more from your comments, which is one of my favorite things to do every week. I take all your questions for Paul. I take everything you want to know from them, fine. But I will dive into the comment section just so you know what's out there, because you don't personally read those. You need to know the vibes of the people. So obviously the Rankin signing got a lot of coverage this week. So these are my two favorite comments that we have. The first one, Paul, we need more pros from you and fewer charts and metrics. I like that. I like it. You know, they love your pros is what that is.
Yeah, see, this is what happens. Like you hear, oh, they love your pros, and I hear, I hate the way you're doing things.
Yeah, I hate the way.
Okay, I know there's often, especially this time. I know there can be a lot of charts. I like them as complimentary. I'm not asking you to even read the whole chart, but I try to have a little bit of both. Some people are numerical learners. It's easier to see something in number form. I feel like it's proof of, rather than me saying this person was better at this, it's here's this person being better at this. Like it's hard. That is hard. But I appreciate that. I appreciate that people maybe like my pros.
If you're just hearing the negative in that, I've got some bad news for you, because I really portrayed this as a tale of two trolls. This was a good news, bad news, and that was the good comment. So
that was the good one? Okay.
Yeah, good. That was the fun one. So the other one, the bad news guy, was on still same topic on rankings. This was from Twitter when you were confirming, again, going back to confirming a national report, something somebody asked about earlier. This guy said, you can't confirm squat. Trash reporter acting like he has sources. That's just not even creative. At least the first guy is like, hey, we don't want these metrics in these charts. Like, that's specific. And it came with a little compliment. Trash reporter acting like he has sources. I mean, come on. That's the laziest trolling. Get more specific if you're going to troll Paul.
Yeah. There's a lot of things you can do. I mean, I'm not particularly attractive. I'm balding. Like, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, we can get into my personal life. Like I show up. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to give you guys need to do the work. I'm not going to do the work for you. Okay. But there's stuff. There's lots of good stuff that you could get into that I feel like are a short.
I like that your de facto is attractiveness. Is that, well, I can't believe he's attacking
I'm ugly. Isn't that where most like Twitter trolls start, is usually getting personal of your personal appearance, because that's all they know is like, so somebody told me that my Twitter photo, I looked like a priest, and I took that personally. I thought that was good. Because there's like a little, there's like a little thing in my picture where it looks like it's white in the middle, and I look very I don't know. I thought that was good.
That's a little bit of effort. I mean, obviously, clearly you have sources. You've worked as a professional reporter for years. You have a big story. Like, come on, that's such lazy trolling. I get that too. As a comedian, somebody will comment on a video or something, not funny. Okay, well, it's got more than 1 million views. It's got 80,000 shares. Some people think it's funny. Come a little bit stronger with your trolling. So let this be a lesson.
That's Twitter in a nutshell. That's Twitter in a nutshell for you. Just say trash something at somebody, and that's pretty much like, copy and paste whatever you're mad about.
So this next week, this is my call to everybody that's on Twitter, leaving comments on your stories on The Athletic. If you're going to say something negative, just be more creative. Make it more fun. And Paul would like you to talk about his looks more. That's on him. He wants that feedback, but there's pictures of him out there. Watch the video. If you're an audio only listener to the Growler, we have video. Go to our YouTube, see what Paul looks like, and find something about his appearance that you can creatively destroy next week. That'll make this more enjoyable for him.
Well, that might be taking it a touch too far.
We'll see. Let's see what we get.
It's funny though. I used to. So when I was at the Inquirer, we were trying to start up. This is almost 10 years ago now. Really kind of start up the video stuff that they were doing there. And I worked with my good friends Kareem El-Ghazar and Sam Green, and they were kind of the sports people that were photographers, but they were doing the video stuff. And the early video stuff that we did, it was like it would always have some thumbnail, and no one ever changed the thumbnail, like in the history of the Inquirer's website at that point, to be something that didn't make you look stupid. And so any video I had done previously, I was a newbie there, so I didn't want to say anything but I'm expressive. I talk with my hands. I make weird faces a lot. And so every single one, and it would be plastered across, because they also wouldn't make it discreet. The videos would just be these big pictures on the Inquirer website of me being like, and I'd be like, the first thing I said when I sat down with them and they took over the job, I was like, guys, I don't know how much extra work this is or what we could do about it. But if you could just like find a thumbnail that doesn't make me look like an idiot when you post it, it would really mean a lot. Because I feel like me making a dumb face on the front of the city's website is just not probably good for anyone, you know? And so they always laugh about that, of like how I thought this was a big ask. And they're like, yeah, that should be pretty standard, that we don't make you look like an idiot with your thumbnail.
Well, if it was so standard, that makes me feel like they were doing it intentionally, that they were just trying to do a little, let's show the new guy what's what.
I think no one even thought to do it, or these were the early days for the Cincinnati Inquirer. Okay.
Thumbnail technology's come so far. And
yeah, hasn't it?
So, oh yeah, I guess we should change gears a little bit more. So this is something I wanted to mention too. So in the comedy world, I had a show in town last week. I got to meet our first listeners in real life, which was exciting for me.
Yes.
This is a young podcast. I had a few people come up to me after the show on Friday and tell me they listened. Their favorite part was when we ask each other questions. So, you know, take heart in that, especially if you're a YouTube troll. Some people like that part of it. So I did want to shout out, we've got listeners in Missouri, I was told, and Washington, D.C. So you said we were big in the USA, and that seems to be checking out 100%.
Yeah, but remember, we're also big in the Middle East. So when you do your Middle East tour, you know, I expect to be approached there.
Yeah, so if you're listening in the Middle East, reach out. We want to hear from you too. I got to hear from a few different places. I am going to Missouri in mid-April to the St. Charles Funny Bones. I heard somebody say they were going to come out to those shows. So hopefully that person has friends. Hopefully maybe there's more than one listener in St. Charles or the Missouri area, and they can come out
together. Group outing.
Yeah, bring some more of you out there, and then we'll talk smack afterwards. I'll give you guys some good feedback that you could really attack Paul with in the comments, you know, and we can workshop your feedback together.
Yeah, you're gaining some by the week, you know. The more you work with me, you're like, man, there's a lot of stuff that we can really take shots at you about here.
Right, and it's like, I don't want this to come from me. We have a working relationship together here. I can't be so specific.
Actually, none of these comments have happened, and you're just like pretending that and take your own personal shots to make me aware of things that you don't want to.
I've got 4 separate subscriptions to The Athletic, just so I can leave different comments and different names as I launder all my specific feedback. Got 10 Twitter accounts just so I can throw those in there and it doesn't look like it's all coming from the same source.
Sounds right.
So I plugged that. And do you want a joke this week, or since we're so news heavy, do you want to move on to our other big newsy topic we have?
I would like, if you have a joke that I'm here for whatever you're working on. I'm here for.
Okay. Well, we were talking about OU a little bit, and the thing that I'm working on this week is, and I've got shows Saturday, it's just about how useless college professors are. You know, like there's just nobody more out of touch in current society than a tenured college professor that just really thinks, especially the ones that have switched since the pandemic, just to doing online only teaching. You know, these guys made some videos a few years ago, and now every semester they just show them to different people, and they get paid $120,000 a year to do that. Like they're just so out of touch, right? But and I'm going to ask you this too. But I remember even when I went to college just a couple years ago, that just how useless some of those professors were. And I will say I had a couple great ones at OU, a couple really great journalism professors that, you know, made an impact. But then I also had somebody like, I had a women's studies professor once, and I was the only guy in women's studies, first of all, which I thought I was being very open-minded, you know?
Yeah.
It turned into just me being on trial for the whole semester, right? We would read something bad that's happened to women. Everybody looks at me like it was my idea. I'm like, I'm just as hungover as the rest of you are. You know, I'm not the one that put all these policies into place in the 1950s.
How many days, like 10 minutes in, was a long topic said, and then they turned to you and said, all right, Mark, explain yourself.
Yeah, that's how it felt. Like on day one, I was looking around. I'm like, there's got to be other. Oh no. It's like I showed up for an intervention for my gender.
And
I didn't
they all
know.
definitely. Now, I don't know if you were, but they all definitely think that you were strictly in that class to try to hook up with them too.
Yeah, and I wasn't, but I mean, I'm not opposed to that strategy. Like, that's a great place to meet ladies, is women's studies. I don't know if I would recommend trying to pick up girls in class, but if there's a class you were going to get them from, that's better than the history of baseball.
Which I
not
took,
a lot of
I took twice. I took history of baseball A and B.
Oh, I'm glad you took both of them, because for a second I thought you just
one was pre-1930 and one was post-1930. It was actually two separate classes by Charles Alexander, legend, man. That class was legendary. I loved it.
Yeah, that was a fun class. One of the rare times when the guy that teaches the class and wrote the textbook, usually it's a bad like combo if you have to read a professor's book for the class. And that was a fun one. But yeah, there's not a lot of girls that you're going to pick up in the history of baseball, talking pre-1930s baseball. We had no girls in that class.
But if there was a girl in there, she's a real one. Okay.
That's true.
She's sought after. There's definitely more dudes interested in that girl than there were any of those women interested in you in women's studies.
Yeah, they hated me without anything. And then at one point, the professor was even trying to make a point, right? And she was like, all right, how would you like it if no matter what you did, Mark, in this class, no matter what you do, you just get a C? That's it. I'm like, that sounds amazing. I would love that. Tell all my other professors this strategy. Let's get this working, you know?
I needed these C's big time.
Yeah, she wasn't making the point she thought she was. So that's what I'll be talking about on stage this weekend, probably next. And then I have another story about my easiest class at OU that's probably a little bit long for this episode. But what was your easiest class that you had in college? You had to take some blow-offs, right?
Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, so spring semester, for 3 straight years, I took water skiing. Water skiing 1, water skiing 2, water skiing 3, which is just water skiing 2 is just, oh, you're taking water skiing again. And then water skiing 3 is, oh, you're taking water skiing again. Okay. And it's just, that's it, because it was an excuse on Friday to go out. It was Friday at like noon. You get a bunch of your friends to take this class. You go out to the like lake that's like 5-10 minutes out there. You hang out, and then eventually someone comes up to you and says, hey, it's your turn to go around. And you go out and you go around, see if you can get up on the skis. If you can, cool. They try to, there's one person in the back of the boat who's like, try to kind of pull yourself up this way. And that's it. That's the class. You get a credit for it. You show up the last 5 weeks. It's an incredible way to start your weekend. You can't really fail it. Even if you never get up and you just like face plant into the water for 5 straight weeks, they'd still be like, I mean, you showed up and tried. They're cool with that.
There's 3 levels of that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, eventually, by the 3rd level, there'd be somebody who'd be doing the single ski, going over the ramp. Nobody cared about that. I just wanted to go out there, hang out with my friends, hit Dairy Queen on the way home, and have a weekend.
What's crazy to me, because I'll still perform at colleges sometimes, is like they still have classes like that, but now it's just you would be paying like $5,000 for that water skiing class, which is insane. Like those credit hours, when you're paying that much, like there was a girl in Clemson that was doing yoga. I'm like, you're paying like $8,000 to just take regular yoga and pay much less than that.
There's yoga on YouTube.
Yeah, you do not need to pay that
forever, and that's free.
I took a jogging class at OU one semester where literally all it was you would find somebody on campus and he would say, jog back to your dorm room. That was it. That was the whole class.
There was a basketball class that I took. I remember one of the years I was there, and the basketball teacher was somebody who was a GA looking to get into sports administration. His name was Martin Jarmond, and he was hysterical. He used the line, I would show up late every time. I told the story before, but I would show up late because I had to come from all the way on the other side of campus to get there, and I couldn't get there in time. And he said, don't tell me about the birth, just show me the baby. Every time I complained because I kept showing up like 1 minute late. He is currently the athletic director at UCLA. Which I find hysterical. Yes,
that is insane.
He was in sports industry. He was a young kid at the time who had played basketball at like UNC Wilmington, and he moved up the ranks, and now he's Mick Cronin's boss.
What a great resume builder.
Which is hysterical. And he has a great line. I hope he uses that with Mick every time he comes back complaining about an L and why his team let him down. I
bet anybody in the UCLA athletic department, they probably have that same story about the birth. Guys like that, they don't have more than one or two great cliches that they like to trot out.
Well, I took a basketball. He definitely had that one. He must have more than one if he made it all the way to that level. So it's kind of a weird claim to fame connection on Martin.
That is crazy. I took a basketball class, not with him though. And that was still another blow off. Like we would just play basketball. I loved that class. I was dominating for like 4 weeks with my low post game. And then they put a girl on me. And I'm like, I'm not going to post up this cute girl. I'm not going to back her down and try and physically dominate. So my team lost. We got out coached. I missed this guy.
Unless you really need a bucket to win, then you got to do what you got to do, you know?
Yeah. Gender war, you know, might take out my revenge from women's studies and really drop my low post moves on some co-ed.
All right. Do we have any updates? Last week we talked about the Urban Dictionary thing, and we were a bit the growler being we were a bit under when Urban Dictionary attacked us, and we did get an email from somebody claiming that
we're not
Joe Rogan podcast is in the Urban Dictionary. Is that true? Did you
That's checked out. And this one, you know, it looked like a real submission too. This was not from the Snatch Investigator, which, you know, I'm still on the fence about his claims and his certifications, but he took us down last week. But yeah, the Joe Rogan podcast also has an entry in Urban Dictionary. And, you know, it's about what you would expect it to be. I don't know. I can't really get too graphic into what that could be, but it is very much about, you know, let's just think metaphorically patting yourself on the back in maybe a different way.
Yeah.
That's what the Joe Rogan podcast is. And the Urban Dictionary.
I want people to keep sending those. Keep sending. If you find other podcast names that are in the Urban Dictionary, we want to know that we are not alone.
And not just if you find them, create them. If they're not there, blaze the trail forward. You be the Snatch Investigator the world needs, and, you know, stake your claim for those podcasts. Then you can email them to us. We'll help push that out to everybody else so it can get traction on Urban Dictionary and take over.
We all need to have goals. We all need to have goals there.
You went to Disney on Ice last week. This was a big story. How'd it go? There was some news there, right?
There's some news there. It's never good when you go to any event, much less something where your entire family would attend, like Disney on Ice, and you get people texting you, hey, you didn't go to the 7 o'clock Disney on Ice show last week, did you? It's like, uh-oh, what happened? I'm like, yeah, apparently there's a measles outbreak at that. Yeah, that's the one we went to. That's great. Good to know. Good news. Entire family vaccinated, so not concerned about the measles spread. But I can tell you, just guessing that some of the people directly behind me are not.
Oh no.
Just a feeling. Just a feeling.
So you guys aren't on measles watch then?
We are not. We have not had any issues with that. We have all our measles shots. Nobody's worried about that. You know what I need to be, though? Here's what happened at Disney on Ice this year. So there was one new addition. So normally they sell these wands. What's that?
There's one new addition besides the measles.
Besides the measles. Okay. They weren't advertising that.
That was a bonus.
There was, although I would say I would rather have the measles have been a part of it than what actually was. And that was these, more than just having regular wands that they basically, you have to pay because your kid will lose his mind. And we talked about the wands last week. They added one that sprays bubbles endlessly. So every kid has a wand that just fires the biggest stream of bubbles out. Well, these seats are on top of each other. Your head is right in front of where they hold the bubble wand. I got absolutely caked with bubbles for an hour and a half. And you can't turn around and be like, come on, kids, stop. Because every kid has it. It's just part of our life now. We're all getting covered in bubbles. And so I am just getting destroyed. Bubbles just flowing down on top of my head. Soap attaching itself to everything. And everyone is. I'm not the only one. You look down the line, everyone's got bubbles on top of them. It's like the Disney people got to be better than this. Or it's felt like they just kind of wanted to punish people for some reason.
Yeah.
It's like the measles aren't enough. Let's cover them in bubbles for an hour and a half.
That's just humiliation. It's insult to injury. Like, you got to do this. And also, all of you guys are getting soaked with bubbles, and you're going to pay us for the experience.
Yeah.
That's something you're getting. The measles we'll throw in for free. It's a little bit of nostalgia for those people, bring back an old disease that we thought was gone. Maybe it's polio next year. Who knows?
Oh, I hope so.
Bubbles, that is a nightmare scenario. The wands you can get used to unless you're epileptic, but the bubbles is just the constant bubbling is what would really start to drive me crazy, right? Because at the beginning you think, all right, a little bit of bubbles, fine. We're here, it's Disney on Ice, a little bit of bubbles, cool. But when it just keeps going on and on and on, that's like Chinese water torture. It's their own.
The wand was big enough that it also filled. If you basically held the button down, about an hour and a half worth of bubbles at Pierce, because it seemed like it was just being held down, and there was enough in there to. Usually that thing runs out in like 10 minutes when I turn that on in my backyard. This thing it must have just somehow created itself. I have no idea. It was like it never stopped, which was really confusing.
That's the design flaw, right? Because there should have been a guy out there just selling buckets of bubble refill juice, because that's how they really get you. Now you make the initial purchase. Now you have to go out halfway through just to reload. It'd be like if the light wands ran out of batteries and your kids started crying. You've got to buy some from the shady guy on the concourse.
Yes.
I'm surprised that the bubbles lasted that long.
Me too. Looking forward to Disney on Ice next year. Bubbles, and this year with rickets. So can't wait to see what comes next for Disney on Ice.
Well, hopefully your kids don't develop rashes or anything like that, because I did see that 3 out of 100
all good, no fevers, everybody's on the up and up, so we came out of it okay. But yeah, you never want to see that text. Did you go to the 7:00 Disney on Ice show?
Yeah, because that text isn't about bubbles. That is a much bigger text.
No, not at all. All right. We did it. We did it big this week. So this episode is a little different because there's so much going on with the team that we kind of were obviously very team heavy. So hopefully some weeks it's going to be like that. Some weeks when there's not much going on, we have more fun with it. But it's still that's kind of the point. It's a malleable show. It's amoeba like. It can go in any number of different directions and shapes, and so that's our shape this week. That's what we got.
We can bob and weave as podcasters. There's a lot we can do, a lot we bring to the table here in the Growler Network. And I want to just reiterate to everybody, great questions this week. Keep sending them in. Get more creative with the insults to Paul if that's the way you choose to go in life. Is internet troll fine? Keep emailing me questions and sending those to us, and just keep sharing the show. Thank you everybody that's listened so far. So many nice things from people, and keep pushing it out there.
Yeah, looking forward to that. So make sure you send us all your stuff, and look, we'll be back next week. Of course, we will have Balds Don't Lie on Monday, Jay and myself on Wednesday, and then we'll be back next Friday. We'll be back more on a normal schedule next week. Still, emergency pods are possible, but there's really not a lot of emergency pod possibility happening. So we'll be back more on a normal schedule, and from there we'll be off and going. So all right, well, thanks everybody for listening. Make sure you keep it locked and subscribe and tell your friends and all that stuff. And make sure you go out and catch Mark out on the circuit. And if you're in Missouri, find some friends. Come on out, join. There's going to be a crew there, we think, at least one. So looking forward to that. All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We'll talk to you next time. Have a good one, everybody.